What's going on, college football fans, and welcome to the First and Long College Football Show. I am your co-host, Marcus. There's your other co-host, Mason. We are on our countdown to kickoff. We're working our way to number one. We are currently at number 9, and in the number 9 slot, we've got the Missouri Tigers. Mason, how you doing today, buddy? Are you ready to talk some Mizzou football?
Yeah, absolutely. Missouri is coming off one of the best seasons that I think I've ever seen them have in the modern era. Of course, when they first entered the SEC, you saw them win the SEC East 2 years in a row. But for some reason, last year felt more special than those years, even though they were not playing in an SEC championship game. This year, they're poised to make the playoffs. I mean, if they win 11 games like they did last year, or 10 games in the regular season, I think a lot of Missouri fans are saying, "Hey, if we can replicate that, we're going to go to the playoffs." And boy, I'm excited. After doing this breakdown, I feel really good about the team. I feel a little bit better than I did probably going into this breakdown, and I'm wondering if you're going to draw the same conclusions that I did.
It was an outstanding year, like you said last year, Mason. It was a historic season, I would say, and beyond the record and beyond some of the players that have stayed and some of them have moved on to the NFL and things like that. I feel like the culture has taken a turn in Missouri. That's really what I feel like is the biggest change to me. It doesn't seem like that long ago that we were kind of on Eli Drinkwitz case. Like, is
Hmm.
is this guy, is he going to be able to do it? Is he we knew what he did at App State back in the day. But is he going to be able to do it at a big boy school, especially at a place like Missouri, who, frankly, Mason, at the time wasn't recruiting up to par, and was struggling to get to bowl games, and then all of a sudden we saw a lot of work come to fruition. Is what I think it was. A lot of probably literally blood and sweat, but probably some tears too, man. Because it's been a long road to hoe for Eli Drinkwitz and company, and I think they're doing an outstanding job out there in Columbia, Missouri. And I don't think it was a one-off, Mason. I think we're about to see another successful season for this team. They're going to be favored in a lot of games. If you're a Missouri Tigers fan, I invite you to subscribe to the channel here. We're your go-to for Power Four college football coverage. We're going to be having live shows throughout the year, predictions, reactions. We have a betting show that we do. I know a lot of you guys like to get in on that. We have a good time with that show for sure. And no live shows would be worth doing if we didn't have you guys come and comment and hang out with us and give us your perspective. We'd love to hear it. What are you betting on? All that good stuff. That stuff is coming up. Mason, how many days away are we? Like 20 days away by the time this releases, something like that. I mean, we're right on the precipice of one of the most engaging college football seasons that we're ever going to see, guys. 12-team playoff.
Yeah,
Missouri fans should certainly feel like they should be part of that discussion. How many days out are we from kickoff, Mason?
17 days till kickoff.
17 days. And I'm sorry if I just whistled and made your headphone spike there, but we are so glad that you're here with us on the First and Long College Football Show. What we do is we dive into offense. We go position group by position group. We do the same thing for defense. And then at the end of the video, we're going to look at the 24 schedule. We'll go game by game, and Mason and I will give our predictions on the season. And that's where you come in. Come in the comment section. Let us know what your predictions are for the season. We'd love to hear that. We learn a lot from you guys. Um, let's jump into this thing, Mason. We were talking about the success that Eli Drinkwitz had last year. 28-21 record overall, man. It didn't just happen overnight, brother. And as we said, things seem to be kind of blossoming a little bit in Columbia. It seems like the NIL situation has been really good here of late. The recruiting seems to be ticking up, at least in 2024. In 2022 as well was a really good class. And I think maybe we saw some of those, fruits of those labors, coming about in 2023. We'll see what it translates to in this next year. But in 2024, 21st class, 2023, the 36th class, 22, you had the 18th best class. And then in 21 and 20, you had 26 and 48 there. So you're noticing you're creeping into the top 20. And Mason, I think there's a big difference between recruiting 50th and recruiting 20th. There's a huge difference in there. there might not be as big a difference from number 1 to number 5, right? A lot of those guys are pretty close in there. Every once in a while, you'll see a runaway class, but for the most part, those guys are pretty packed in. When you're coming from the 40s or 50s down to the 20s, 25, you're starting to see a big difference. And I think look, it's no secret. Talent is how you win in college football. Talent accumulation, stacking talent on top of talent on top of talent. It's what Nick Saban did. It's what Kirby Smart's doing. Ryan Day's doing it, even though he hasn't won a championship. But it's a game. It's a numbers game. And Eli Drinkwitz, I think, really understands that game very, very well. Doing well in the transfer portal, 13th in 2024. Doing good against all your rivals. You're about to pick up another rival in Oklahoma. 3-1 against Arkansas since 2020. 4-0 against South Carolina. Mason, I'm an SEC guy. Did you know that South Carolina and Missouri were big rivals?
No, it kind of makes sense, but I did not realize that. That's a new
No
foreign
idea.
rivalry, I guess.
Yeah, I had absolutely no idea. South Carolina has rivalries with Missouri and Texas A&M. So you go ahead and tell me how that happened. But it's the SEC. Honestly, every conference game just about is a rivalry game, minus Vandy, which is everybody's favorite road game in the SEC, right? What do you think about these numbers, Mason? We try to give a good picture of what is going on with the team overall, and I think this is a good depiction of this team. Influx of talent coming in. You got guys going out to the NFL, and that's a good thing. That's a good sign for this program. Whenever you've got inflow and you've got outflow, and you're winning ball games in the meantime. What do you think about what we saw last year? Lost a couple of games there. That's it. It was a great season. What do you think?
Well, I think that the culture is good, and under Drinkwitz, since 2020, it seems like things have been trending in the right direction. I think that people had kind of felt like Drinkwitz was stale, I guess, as a head coach for a while up until last season. And you saw in 2023 the recruiting and the transfer portal kind of dipped a little bit, and I think that that's a correlation to what was going on in 2022, really in the 2022 season. And then you get a successful 2023 season, and he says, "See, like I can do it. This is working." It just takes longer at a place like Missouri to compete with in the SEC with the big boys who have been doing it for so long. Or if you're Kirby Smart, when you start with the Georgia, right, it's the ramp up is much less, much less
Sure.
than it is if you are to start at Missouri to try to get yourself into competing for national championships. Well, now the proof is in the pudding, finally. So you can see that this team can go in and play in a playoff game, especially since we've expanded to 12 teams, and they can play with anybody. So now you see that ranking for recruiting go down to 21, and then for the transfer portal go down to 13. And I think that's you can draw a direct correlation there to the on-field success. Now, what's important though is instead of recruiting at in the 50s or outside of the top 25, they've stacked almost four outside of 2023. Basically top 25 classes together in a row. So this unit today is full of all of these four classes, probably a little bit in 2020 as well. So my point in saying that is that this roster is completely reworked, it's completely revamped, and now you're seeing the difference in talent on the roster in conjunction with some great coaching from Eli Drinkwitz and his coordinators, one of which just left. But anyways, I think that the state of the culture is really good, and he's going to have to put together one more successful year so that nobody can say it was a fluke or a one-off. And then I think that he's really going to have this thing rolling.
Well, we're going to go over that 2024 schedule here in a minute. I was just peeking ahead, and it seems tailor made for another good season. Let's look at what the team.
Easiest schedule in the SEC this year.
It's got to be. I haven't
It
seen
is.
one
Yep.
anywhere near that easy. So we're going to get into that towards the end of the video. Let's see what this team looks like, and we'll kind of go from there. But overall, I think pride is high for this team. Oh, And Mason, we didn't even mention their defeat of Ohio State at the end of the season. And I just have to give a good old SEC attaboy over to the Mizzou folks over there. Thank you for taking care of Ohio State, and they had to cry and make a bunch of excuses about it, but you won fair and square, and that was I watched every bit of that game and ate it up with a spoon. Um, let's talk 2023 stats and this offense. You got Kirby Moore at the helm on the offense, and we saw drastic improvements last year. Now, is there room to improve? Sure, there is. But this here's what I look for in an offense, Mason. You don't have to have the number one offense in the country to win a championship, but you have to be decent at everything. If you're not going to be the best at one or two things, you've got to be at least decent at everything. And it seems like that's what this offense pretty much was. It top 50 in every category. And when you're top 50 in every category, that means you've got 80 something teams behind you, right? So that puts you in the middle to the upper middle, of the pack of the big boy teams. And if you can get a defense to work together with this offense, complementary, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape. Got a lot of guys coming back, though. 83% return in production in 2024. I could see these numbers improving as we get another year under a lot of these guys' belt. 29th in scoring offense last year. That's pretty good. I'll take that. 49. The biggest thing on this page was the run stopping, Mason. It was rush yards per game allowed, or excuse me, it was not rush stopping. Running the football is what I meant to say. Rush yards per game, 172. That was good for 49th. Rush yards per carry, 4.51. That was good for 49th, which is not a horrible number, but I mean, you'd like to see it for team wise above, right around 5, right? And that would put you in pretty good company. This team loses some really good running backs. We're going to get into that in a second. Let's before we do that, jump into the quarterback who we mentioned just a second ago. Brady Cook's back, Mason. What do you think about the prospect of having Brady Cook back again after a really good season last year? 3,300 plus yards, 66% completion, 21-6 touchdown interception ratio, and he ran the ball halfway decent as well. What do you think about Brady Cook coming back into this offense and into Kirby Moore's offense for another year?
Yeah, I really like Brady Cook. I think he's an above average quarterback in the SEC. Got a B plus, A minus arm, makes good decisions now, and plays with a lot of grit. I think he kind of does a little bit of everything too. We've seen him pass pretty well and run the ball well. Had over 300 yards rushing last year, 8 touchdowns, and ran for 33 first downs. That's exactly what you want out of a quarterback, whether they're playing in the pocket or not. You want them to be able to extend drives with their legs if nobody's open downfield, and he had to do that a lot. Somebody who really trusts his receivers, right? That's what I see in Brady Cook, and why wouldn't you? You've got 3 really good ones, and we'll get into those in just a second, maybe some more. But he's 46% on throws 20 plus yards downfield, which is really good. For kind of taking the deep shots, I think that's pretty good, and it shows that he has a lot of trust in those guys and can rely on them to make the catches. So he's not afraid to air it out. Really like what Brady Cook brings to the table. Drinkwitz goes out and gets Drew Pine to kind of back him up as a redshirt junior, a fourth-year guy. You get some experience back there behind him. I thought it was going to be Sam Horn. I was excited to see Sam Horn. If Brady Cook decided to go to the NFL, well, Sam Horn has Tommy John surgery. He's also a baseball prospect and went out with Tommy John surgery, so he's going to miss the whole season this year. But really excited to get him back at some point. But I think, given the circumstances, Drew Pine's a pretty good backup. So at least they were able to go out there and get someone in place of Sam Horn there. And but yeah, Brady Cook as a whole, I think he's the captain of this team for a reason, and really good, like I said, above average SEC quarterback.
He showed improvement from 22 to 23, and that's what's encouraging to me and with him coming back, because if he can show around the same amount of improvement from 23 to 24, then he's going to be able to lead this offense to some really, really good days. In 22, he was around 64.8% completion. As you can see, 66.1% last year. So ticks up a couple. If you could get that ticked up to 69 to 70%, Mason, that would really go a long way, and probably put Brady Cook in the company of some. I don't even like talking about the Heisman, but it would put him in those categories, right? If he's around 70% completion, he threw in 2023, he threw for 500 more yards than he did in 2022. Um, he increased his average uh, yards per attempt by almost 2 yards. He threw 7 more touchdowns and 1 less interception. If these numbers continue on that path, which I'm not saying that's not a for sure thing, obviously, but if they tick in the right direction again, you're talking about an outstanding season for the Missouri quarterback, and um, in turn, a really good season for this offense. And you might need it after some of the running backs have stepped away. But before we get to running back, let's get to wide receivers. We got a couple of stars on this page, man. You were talking about the wide receivers. We got some daggum good ones, man. They should be among the best in the nation in 2024. I'm not going to say number one in the nation, but this is a top 10 wide receiver core in the country. With all 3 top wideouts from 2023 returning, Luther Burden being the headliner there, 86 receptions, 1,212 yards, 9 touchdowns. That's good for a 14.1 yards per reception. Outstanding numbers there. Theo Weiss is kind of what I would figure to be the number 2 in this offense. This guy seemed like every time Missouri needed a big catch on third down, Theo Weiss was the guy to get it done last year. 49 receptions, 682 yards, 6 touchdowns, 13.9 yards per reception. And then you got Mookie Cooper that's more than likely going to be filling in that other wide receiver spot, probably rotating in some with some of these other guys, I would imagine. But 36 receptions, 447 yards is not bad stats for your third guy. You can see down there at the bottom of the page, we've got some other people listed as well. Incoming freshmen, Courtney Crutchfield and James Madison. That's 4 and a 3-star, respectively there. And then you've got Makai Miller and Speedy Johnson, who bring just totally different aspects to this offense and this wide receiver group. So, and they'll be working on, I think Speedy Johnson may possibly be working on special teams as well, is what it sounds like to me. So, probably going to get a chance to see him there. Anybody who's got a name Speedy Johnson, Mason, which was my nickname in high school. My nickname in high school was Speedy Johnson, by the way. But no, I want to get your take on this wide receiver room. How do we get the ball to Speedy Johnson, man?
Yeah, right. Love that name. Put him back on punt return, kick return, in the slot. I mean, he just sounds like I have no idea how big he is. He sounds like a short, quick possession receiver. You know, just hearing the name Speedy Johnson. I think of Mighty Mouse. You know, that's kind of what comes to mind. But no, in all seriousness, great recruiting class. I think I think getting Courtney Crutchfield and James Madison adds to this room a pretty good bit. And I really like Marquise Johnson as well, coming off the bench. As a true freshman last year, had 383 yards and 3 touchdowns. That one of those future wide receiver ones in my eyes, right? Theo Weiss is incredible. Really love his game. Former 5-star out of Oklahoma, had 32 first down catches last year. You mentioned the yards and the touchdowns, but just plays with a consistency, right? That what you're going to get out of him week in and week out. Really love to see that, especially from like a fantasy football perspective. He's that type of football player that you're going to get your points out of each and every week. Luther Burden's kind of hit or miss, right? He definitely takes – and look, Luther Burden's best player on the field every time he steps on the field, right? Just about. But he kind of has that big play potential where he could go off for 200 yards in a game with 3 touchdowns, and then he could kind of go cold in some games where he gets covered pretty well and gets bracketed and things like that. But a special athlete nonetheless. I mean, this guy is Deebo Samuel in college right now. You hear that comp thrown out a lot, but I feel like Luther Burden's the truth. I mean, he is him. He's exactly what you want in a wide receiver, and really fun to watch, really exciting to watch. And so is Mookie Cooper. I think that we've got to find a way to get him in the end zone, right?
Yeah.
As a program, you got to give this guy. He's eating. We just got to get him in the end zone, get him over that hump, and once they do that, I think he's going to be a weapon. But really love the outlook of this wide receiver room. Kind of really didn't understand how good it was until I broke it down.
Me neither.
From the outside looking in, you're thinking you got two good ones, and it's really four. You've got four really good ones that I feel comfortable with, and some young talent behind them. So I think they're pretty stacked for years to come at wide receiver.
And you got to figure Kirby Moore is going to probably be installing more wrinkles in this offense, as he goes. You saw the improvement last year. I think to see more improvement this year, you'll probably see more of those wrinkles. And we saw a lot more tight end play, effective tight end play in 23 than we did versus in 2022 for the Missouri Tigers. So I think maybe we'll be able to see that continue. But before we get to tight ends, let's talk running backs, man, because if there's a question on this offense, I think it's probably this running back room, right? And not to say that Missouri didn't answer the bell, because you go out and you bring in some really really good transfers. You got Marcus Carroll comes in from Georgia State, 274 carries. Mason, that I
Yeah.
said that right, 274 carries. That's unbelievable. 1,350 yards, which is pretty good. I think that was average. The average was like right around 5, I think. Not bad. But 13 touchdowns, 23 receptions, 234 yards receiving. That is really good stuff. And one of the best running backs that went into the portal, minus like Damian Martinez or something like that. And of course the guys that went to Ohio State there. Nate Noel, 173 carries, 834 yards, 5 touchdowns last year. He had a few catches out of the backfield for 86 yards for App State last year. So you go out and you bring in a couple of really good transfers. You've got incoming freshman Kwan Lacey, who's a 4-star, top 200 player in the country. You got to figure that maybe he's going to get he'll be able to get in there and get his beak wet. What do you think? I think I messed up down here at the bottom of this page. Is there another running back that was coming in? Maybe
I'm thinking Nate Noel may have been a 3-star transfer running back.
Okay. Maybe I just double went over Nate Noel twice there. Anyway, what do you think about this running back room? Not super deep, Mason. It's not super deep. And this
Yeah.
team really relied on the running back last year, right? Trader
Yeah.
had just had an unbelievable season. I don't think you could have wrote a story any better than Mr. Schrader and the success that he had leading the SEC in rushing last year. I mean, these guys got some big shoes to fill, and that's why I say that if Brady Cook can progress, maybe he can take up some of this production, because I'm not sure that you can come in and replicate exactly what Mr. Schrader did last year. What is your thoughts on the running back room? Big shoes to fill. I feel like they did the very best they could out of the transfer portal.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's really tough to put together a transfer portal class of running backs, I think. But I feel like Missouri did a pretty good job. My only concern really with Marcus Carroll is the fact that he carried the ball 274 times last year, and then had another 23 receptions. You're talking 300 touches on the year, at 300 times that you got tackled. Um, More than 300 times you got hit, because he had some missed tackles and things like that. So I'm worried about the health of Marcus Carroll, and I think that's a fair question. It's not really fair. It's not fair to him that he got a lot of production and got to carry the ball a ton, but you're talking about a guy with a lot of mileage, and in a running back room that is very thin. So it is a little bit concerning, I would say. But I really like his stuff. If he stays healthy all year, I think he's phenomenal. I think he's going to play lights out, for sure. 1,344 yards, 13 touchdowns last year, 44 missed tackles, and 46 carries of 10 yards or more. He had
Shoo.
46 carry, 460 yards on
Plus.
or
Yeah.
more on 46 carries. So, anyways, a really special guy, but a workhorse, obviously, kind of a thumper as far as size goes. Really solid, low center of gravity type of running back. And then Nate Noel brings a little bit of that lightning. You can kind of tell based off the pictures here. He's a little bit slimmer, about 190 pounds, and just kind of has that extra little wiggle. A little bit of a pass catcher out of the backfield. So I mean, in a sense of two running backs complementing one another with different play styles, I think it's phenomenal. But I am concerned about the mileage on Carroll and the fragility of Noel. Can they both stay healthy for the entire season? Chances are at least one of them will, but if for both of them to be healthy for the entire season, I think is questionable. But as of right now, I mean, we're not going to predict that anybody gets hurt. So
Sure.
I would say I really like this group. We just have to see them do it in the SEC, which we haven't yet, and that's kind of the question to me. But definitely the unit that I have the most questions about on the offensive side of the football.
Nate Noel finishes his career at App State as the 8th all-time in rushing for that school. And so will be a top 10 rusher in that school's history as of now. And you're absolutely right, Mason. This is a really good lightning and thunder combination here if they can stay healthy. And my correction for my note down at the bottom of this slide, the 3-star running back that's out of 2023 class that will play a role is Jamal Roberts, who
Mm-hmm.
redshirted last year.
Yeah.
So that was the mix up there on your notes there at the bottom. So look for Jamal Roberts to come in sparingly, and we'll see how he does. I mean, you know, this could be one of those position groups that we look back at the end of the season and we say, wow, like Kawan Lacey and Jamal Roberts ended up having to man up. You just never know. You've got to have 4 legitimate options in that running back room. I think you got 2, and I think you got 2 unknowns. They very well could work out. We'll see. We'll see. Definitely the weakness of the offense that I've seen thus far. Let's talk about the offensive line. I don't think that this is a weakness for this team. There is some retooling up front as All-American tackle Javon Foster and guard Xavier Delgado have both departed for the NFL. So you got 3 key pieces back, anchored by right tackle Armand Mimbu. Center Connor Tolleson is an all-league candidate, while the right guard Cameron Johnson is a powerful force on the interior. You totally upset your rival that you're about to start playing, I guess, every year, right? You upset Oklahoma and go and get their guy, Caden Green. He started 5 games last season, and he's got flexibility, Mason. He can play tackle or guard. And then you go and get Marcus Bryant from SMU, and looks like he'll be the man at left tackle. So everybody for this group was there on campus for spring, Mason, other than Marcus Bryant. So you really got a chance to get all these guys together and do your best to get these guys acclimated. Everybody from center to that right tackle spot is returning. You had to fix those 2 left spots and figure out what you're doing there. That flexibility from Caden Green sure did come in handy. Him being able to scoot into that guard position instead of tackle and let Marcus Bryant play at tackle, that huge frame that Marcus Bryant has at 6'8", 318. That is a massive, massive human. I like the size that this line has got. You don't typically see a 6'3" tackle, Armand Mimbu. That's typically in the SEC you're going to see guys more 6'5" to 6'8", something like that, because they like the wingspan. They like you to have that length on the arms, be able to create space between you and the defender. And but he's a returning guy, and he's definitely going to be getting the starting reps there. And then you've got JUCO transfer Javen Richardson. He looks to secure that 6-man utility role and come in and help out this offensive line when it needs it. This is a good group. I know Caden Green is a good one. Highly sought after guy coming out of high school. Played well at the end of the year last year for Oklahoma, and he'll move over to guard, and we'll see how he does there. But for all intents and purposes, we'll see how Marcus Bryant does in the SEC coming over from SMU. But that's a good football program over there. We'll see how he gets acclimated with Mizzou. What do you think about this line?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Marcus Bryant with that frame. Like you said, he's a long-time starter. I mean, this guy's been playing football for 4 years already and starting for most of that time. He's got over 2,300 snaps. So the fact that he misses spring ball doesn't mean a damn thing. This guy's a veteran. He knows what he's doing. Gave up 2 sacks last year and 18 hurries, which is pretty good at SMU. But really like what he brings. I think for an offensive tackle coming out of the transfer portal, this is about as good as it gets. Until you look at Caden Green, and so to me, Missouri got 2 of the best, probably 2 of the top 5 offensive linemen coming out of the transfer portal, and Caden Green might have been the best one of them all when you look at projection and just overall talent. Younger. He's a sophomore, so you're going to get at least 2 years out of him. Probably only 2 years out of him with the way that he's been playing. But had 293 pass snaps last year. Didn't give up a single sack. 11 hurries. He's going to kick in and play guard this year, like you mentioned. But I think after this year, when Marcus Bryant goes out, we'll see him move back to left tackle. But yeah, started his last 4 games at tackle last year. So, but played both for Oklahoma as well. And so to me, I think you're seeing a lot of versatility. You mentioned Armand Membu, who might be the best offensive lineman this year on this team. Really good, maybe All-American type of offensive lineman here, but he is a little bit undersized. Everything I'm hearing about him, though, is that he's just as strong as a freaking bull, and it doesn't matter. Once he gets his paws on you, you're dead, basically. He may not have the reach that some of these offensive tackles have, but as soon as he gets his paws on you, you're not going anywhere. So I think it's pretty fun to watch a smaller, underdog type of offensive tackle in the SEC, especially. But yeah, what a talent, right, at right tackle, and I'm excited for this unit. I think it's fair to question the depth of the unit. We don't always know. It's really tough, especially from an outsider perspective when we're covering 70 teams to really know what the second level of the offensive line looks like. But I like the starting 5. I think that they're going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know much about Mitchell Walters, Tristan Wilson, Drake Heisemeyer, Logan Riker, Brandon Solis. Those are some of your backup guys, and we talked about Javen Richardson fighting for that 6-man role. That's we know these starters. We know this is a good starting group. I think you've got a good 6th man there. It sounds like to me, and I'm gonna say that this line passes the long college football preseason test. I'll take it. I'll take it. Let's talk about tight ends real quick, and we'll jump over into defense. Mason, you got Brett Norfleet coming back, 18 receptions, 197 yards, 3 touchdowns. I talked about the tight ends a little bit ago. In 2022, this tight end group had 10 catches total for the whole year. And last year in 2023, you see Brett Norfleet had 18 by himself. I'm wondering if we're going to see more, evolution into some of that offense. There's so many options in that wide receiver room. The offensive line seems good enough to where you should be able to use your tight ends in more than just a blocking scheme. So it'll be interesting to see how they use these guys. He only had 18 receptions and he had 3 touchdowns. Lets me know he's a big target that Brady Cook likes to find in the red zone. Maybe you can see more of that this season. What do you think about these guys?
Yeah, I mean, not a whole lot of production there. This isn't a team that really just features the tight end. You're
Sure.
not going to see many two tight end sets with Missouri. But I will say they brought in another two freshmen this year, so maybe that's starting to maybe they're starting to transition into a little bit more of a tight end heavy unit. But that's 2 years in a row now that they've brought in two tight ends in the recruiting classes. So I think that that's important to note that maybe they're wanting to go towards the tight end a little bit more this season and beyond. But you got to get those guys some more reps because. If 23 receptions are going to tight ends over the course of a whole season, I don't think that you're going to attract many top end talent at that position.
Tight end is one of those things, Mason. I think it's a little easier. I know it's a little easier to find a good blocking tight end than it is to find one that's versatile and can go out and catch the football. It's kind of like a cherry on top type of position to me. When you've got all your other ducks in a row, your T's crossed, your I's dotted, then you start looking at tight end saying, all right, how do we soup this up? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of one of the last things on the offense I feel like that you are thinking about putting a little flair into. But we saw an uptick in 23. Maybe we will in 24. Something to definitely keep your eye on. But tight end is a fun position. As a Georgia fan, the evolution of the tight end over the last few years has been one of the funnest things to watch as a Georgia fan. Georgia has some of the best tight ends in the country every single year now, and I love watching those guys. It's a lot of fun, and I know Missouri fans would too. So we'll see how that develops. Let's jump over into the defense. Corey Batoon comes in to take over for Blake Baker, who has taken off to LSU to try to revamp that horrible defense they've got. Um, 2023 stats were decent, right? It looks pretty similar to like the offense, Mason. I mean, pretty good for the most part. You got a couple of areas. It seemed like the pass was a little bit more of a bugaboo than facing the run. But all in all, pretty even numbers across the board. Top 50 and everything. That's good in my eyes. That's a good thing. You don't have anything down in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Anything just egregious. 25th scoring defense has 20.8 points per game. You're going to win a lot of football games being able to do that, man. Especially with this offense. 32nd in the country rush yards per game allowed at 123. That's pretty doggone good. I'll take that. Anything 150 or under these days is I would consider decent if you did it every single game. 38th in yards per rush allowed, 3.79. That's a pretty solid number there. But the passing yards, that's kind of an area that needed a little bit of addressing, I guess you could say. Pass yards per game allowed, 213.2. 37th in the country, and pass yards per pass allowed, 6.8. That's not a bad number. And then third down conversion percentage allowed, 36.9. Pretty decent. But you got 61% of the returning production coming back in 2024. So pretty much a run of the mill number there. Maybe even on the low end, 61%. Let's jump into the D line. I like this defensive line, Mason. They went and got a couple of guys out of the transfer portal, and Zion Young and Chris McClellan. They both of these guys, people are talking a ton about. It looks like they're going to be able to help right away. You go to Georgia Tech, you pick up Eddie Kelly. Darius Smith comes over from Georgia. He had a great spring. Everybody's just raving about that guy. And then you've got some amazing freshmen coming in that could make a big impact. And that's not even to mention your best returners from last year, Johnny Walker and Christian Williams, who come back to a defensive line where they're going to be able to put up some serious numbers. Look at Johnny Walker's numbers from last year: 43 tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. Had an outstanding year, and he looks to come back to the buffet for seconds. What do you think about this defensive line, man? I feel pretty doggone good about it. I think that the transfer portal really helped in this group.
Yeah, I mean, picking up where you left off with Johnny Walker, um, he was overshadowed by Darius Robinson last year. I mean, point blank period. This guy played really well. Had 24 run stops, which led the team. Um, you mentioned that the pass rushing statistics there. Also 20 quarterback hurries, which is really good. Yeah, he was pretty awesome coming off the edge there. But when you have a first round talent like Darius Robinson playing the defensive line as well, it's tough to really get the attention. And I think that that's what people missed on Johnny Walker. But this year he could kind of play himself into nearly a household type name, and I I think if he progresses just a little bit from where he was last year, we'll be talking about him as SEC fans. But really like what they did in the transfer portal as well. Brought in a lot of talent, right? Darius Smith, I think, is going to end up being a future NFL player. I don't know if I can go so far as to say he's like a first rounder, but this may be like a day two guy, second or third round type of guy. Which I mean, you take those guys all day. Just for Darius Smith, he comes over from Georgia, was really just kind of pushed out by a couple of 5 stars who came in a class behind him, right? Was kind of sandwiched in between 2 classes of 5 stars, and there's just nowhere for him to play. He came in as a 3-star at Georgia, but was like a diamond in the rough type of 3-star. Really long, strong guy for his lankiness, and super fast. Can play zone coverage if he needs to. Can play the run pretty well. I think Missouri fans got or the Missouri team got a really good player in Darius Smith. Really excited to see him get some reps this year. And then, Chris McClellan and Zion Young, I think that you're looking at these 2 guys and wondering what you're going to get out of them. Not a ton of talent, or excuse me, not a ton of production. You're banking on the talent, right? Coming over from Florida and coming over from Michigan State, they've got some years in the top 2 divisions in college football, the top 2 conferences. So I'm excited to see them get some more opportunities, but they didn't have a ton of production last year, so it's really tough to go to base a judgment off of them. But ultimately, I think you've got a really good mix of talented players with experience, players with high upside, and then some younger players who you just want to see kind of fill out this year. Pretty deep line, I think, overall. And we didn't even mention Williams Nwaneri coming in as the number 3 player in the country last year, true freshman. I don't know where he's going to fit in as a true freshman right away. If he's truly special, you'll see him, especially later in the year, you'll see him a pretty good bit. It's going to be tough to keep that guy off the field, but got to let him earn it, right? You can't just put him on the top of the depth chart right as soon as he gets into, steps onto campus. He's got to earn it. So right now looks like he's in playing with the threes pretty much. But we'll see if he can kind of work his way up the depth chart. He's a fun prospect to watch, and I know that Missouri fans are really excited for what they got in a top 5 pick.
Eddie Kelly, Darius Smith, Zion Young, Chris McClellan, every single one of these guys I've heard mentioned in interviews from coaches saying that these guys are making a difference. They're showing out. They've showed up with the right attitude. Chris McClellan was buried on a pretty bad Florida team, right? And you just, when you're on a bad team, you don't get the recognition. I mean, that's just a fact. That's just kind of how it is. And I know like you said, he played sparingly, but I think that he's going to be able to come into his own a little bit more playing on this Missouri team, and I think he's going to get a chance to do so. And by the way, I can't wait to see Williams Nwaneri. I can't wait. I've heard a ton about this guy. He's made a bunch of money off of NIL and stuff. They passed new laws literally to get this guy to be able to come play at Missouri. It was funny. They passed laws in Missouri about high school NIL. The very next day he commits to Missouri. I can't wait to see. There's been a ton of hubbubaloo about this guy. Can't wait to see it on the field, man. Let's talk about the linebackers. You got a couple of veteran guys coming back, Chuck Hicks, Tristan Newsom. These guys are older, senior guys. I think both of them are seniors. One of them definitely was. I can't remember what the other one was, but they're upperclassmen. Yeah. They both are. 53 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 2 sacks for Chuck Hicks, 51 tackles and half a sack for Tristan Newsom. And then you bring in a couple of transfers. Jeremiah Beasley he's a transfer, but it's just he's never actually played college football. He went to Michigan for the spring, right? And then ended up leaving Michigan after the spring, and he's over at Missouri. So that was a highly touted guy, right? A highly recruited guy, and so you look for him to maybe come in and help out. But Corey Flagg to me looks like the guy. 48 tackles, one forced fumble last year, and one other guy that I'd be remiss if I didn't mention is Khalil Jacobs, who follows his defensive coordinator over from South Alabama. He had 56 tackles, 3 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles last year. I think that may be a guy that you see rotate in a pretty good bit with already having the familiarity with his defensive coordinator and the system. Um, I look to see Khalil Jacobs make an impact as well. What do you think about the linebacker room? You only got a couple of spots to fill here, and it seems like you've got, you know, 5 or 6 guys that could, maybe not all of them are starting level, but I think at least 4 of them are, right?
Yeah, I think so. We're gonna have to wait and see on Jeremiah Beasley. Kind of pump the brakes there a little bit.
Sure.
Was a top 200 overall recruit. Definitely guys you want in your program. You know those high end 4-star type of guys, and outside of him, you bring in 2 other true freshmen and Brian Huff and Nicholas Rodriguez. Not really expecting them to factor into this competition, but you do have some good young talent, and also Brayshawn Littlejohn, who's a redshirt freshman. A lot of young talent on this team, coupled with some upperclassmen, a couple of upperclassmen transfers coming in with Khalil Jacobs and Corey Flagg. I think that those are the 2 that I'm kind of looking at to back up Chuck Hicks and Tristan Newson. But look, it's no secret those 2 are your starters. There's no competition for the starting position. You're kind of looking for at least a third guy who you can rotate
Mhm.
in, give these guys a little bit of a break because you got 2 ball hawks here who are just running all over the field, and you gotta give those guys a little bit of a break so they can go get their stats with some fresh legs. But really like what these 2 guys do, both in the run game and in the passing game. You see 18 tackles for a loss between the 2. That's really productive from the middle linebacker group, a unit that doesn't always get past that line of scrimmage. They're kind of on their heels a lot of the time and reacting to what they see in front of them. But I think that these are 2 versatile linebackers, and I really like what they're bringing. This defense as a whole is pretty complete, as you're probably about to find out as we get into the defensive backs.
Let's jump into it. Secondary. Um, Here's what it looks like, folks. Transfer Toriano Pride comes over from Clemson, and from what I'm hearing, sounds like he could be your starter at one of those corner spots. A guy that plays real physical in coverage, and um, for all intents and purposes, I think he should start at one of those spots. The other one could come down to Drayden Norwood. That's Dre Norwood, as I put on your screen there. Um, he played some last season, and you got a couple of 4-star recruits, Trajan Greco and Cameron Keys. Those guys are coming in, so they'll get a chance to kind of learn behind these other cornerbacks there. Um, Dalen Carnell is back, and he should continue to man the nickel and has a chance to really be a breakout performer for the defense this year. And then you've got you kind of had a battle going on there at safety, but you got Joseph Charleston. He's the veteran guy, and the leading returning tackler with 61 tackles. And then you've got Trevez Johnson has the experience there at the other safety spot, but apparently the staff is high on Marvin Burks Jr. So from everything I've read and everything, these 2 safety spots, they're not player specific. And what I mean by that is you can mix and match these safeties and just get the best 2 on the field. And it's not really going to matter, one playing right or left or weak side, strong side, blah, blah, blah. So I think you'll probably see some guys rotating in and out. It's all about getting the best players on the field here. Um, I feel good about the starters. I don't think this is very deep though, man. That's my only concern here. And we talked about the stats earlier. This was an area that needed some improvement on this defense, at least statistically from last year. Um, you got a few pieces to plug in there, but it seems like you're going to need these guys to stay healthy if you're wanting to have, an above average secondary in the SEC this year. What do you think about these corners and safeties in this nickelback?
Yeah, I think that they're pretty good. Barring injury, right? And that's
Mhm.
when you're a Missouri and you're transitioning from being a lower of the pack SEC team to being a playoff contender, you're gonna try to put the best 22 out there, and then just hope the building stays upright, right? Hope there are no cracks in the foundation and somebody gets hurt, and then hope that somebody's developed behind them who can come in and play. That's not always the case, but you're going to have this. They're in a transition period, and I think that you've. It's fair to question what's behind the starters, but we don't know what kind of work they've put in either. So I think that when I look at on paper what the starters kind of bring to the table, in particular, I think Toriano Pride is probably 1A or 1B as far as this starting five right here goes. As a top talent. He's a former top 50 recruit coming over from Clemson at 36 tackles last year, 1 interception, 8 pass breakups. Last year was kind of his first full year playing. So I think that's maybe why you didn't hear a ton about him throughout this time, especially as a top 50 overall recruit. You expect to hear a lot from him as a freshman and a sophomore, but it wasn't until, as a freshman, you expect to hear a lot. As a sophomore, he actually got to play almost a full season, and we saw some pretty good production from him, including 8 pass breakups. So I think that there's a lot of upside with him playing at that cornerback position. And then the other main stud that I'm thinking of is Dalen Carnell. This guy's lights out at the nickel position. Had 51 tackles last year, which was just as many as your middle linebackers. And 6 tackles for a loss, 3 sacks, 7 pass breakups, 13 quarterback hurries. Just a ton of production. He's my favorite player on this defense. Plays the pass well, plays the run well, and really gets into the backfield. Has a good pass rush. As far as a DB goes, he's exactly what you want at the star position. He's the quintessential nickel DB or star DB, whatever you want to call it, because he's as close to the football as any other DB. He plays the football well. He's kind of a ball hawk, can drop back in coverage and play that well, but he's not afraid to blitz the quarterback and come on a DB blitz. Just a really solid player for the SEC, and not an overly talented guy, not some just physical specimen, but just plays with a lot of grit and is a true professional out there on the field, and just a really really fun player to watch. But I think that with them, and then at the safety position, you've got Joseph Charleston, who was second on the team in tackles with 61 last year with 4 pass breakups. So another versatile piece there, roaming around in center field for this DB field. But yeah, between those three, right, I think we've got 3 solid starters. Outside of that, you've got Marvin Burks, who's kind of the talented sophomore who's coming in and hopefully getting a lot better. Sounds like he's kind of earning his right to play at least. And then Drayden Norwood, who's more of the veteran, fourth-year player who's had some experience. Only logged 20 tackles last year, so I'm not sure as far as the amount of snaps that he played or anything like that. Doesn't necessarily bring a ton of experience, but SEC experience nonetheless, and a veteran back there in this DB unit. So ultimately, I mean, is it the best unit in the SEC? No, but I think that it's a pretty solid unit. And another unit that you look at, and there's no unit on defense here that's just wows you. Absolutely, you would look at the defensive line and say, yeah, we've got a ton of depth there, but there's no just over the top unit on the defense, which I think is a correlation to the numbers that we saw from them last year, where they were good, not great, but not bad in any area. And that's what I'm seeing in this entire unit as a whole on the defense. They're not bad anywhere, right? There's no place you can kind of circle and say, yeah, you're probably going to get beat there. I don't see that. And I've seen that with some other programs, namely like at Texas, where I've got real questions about their secondary. I don't see that with Missouri. I think they're pretty solid. So, just kind of looking at a team that people are projecting to be better than Missouri. Where honestly, they've got more holes than Missouri does. So I'm excited to see what this unit puts out on film and see what they're able to do this year.
Yeah, you've got Shamar McNeil, Marcus Clark, Philip Roche, Sidney Williams, and we mentioned Trevez Johnson there on your second team for your secondary. Hopefully, you don't have to see too many of those guys, right, Mason? Because if you do, then you know what's going to happen in the SEC. You got somebody that's inexperienced or is a question mark in your secondary. Guess what's about to happen? They about to get thrown at over and over and over, and that's just the way it is in this league. I've seen it happen to players at Georgia. You name it. You name the team. Everybody talks. Everybody's got the film. We'll see how it pans out. Let's jump into the 2024 Missouri schedule, Mason. We talked about it a little bit earlier in the show. Got to be the easiest schedule in the SEC this year. And there is absolutely no shame in that. If you're a Missouri fan, you should be very excited. That's a good thing because even though it is the easiest schedule in the SEC, it's still an SEC schedule. This team is projected for 9.5 wins. From is what I looked up before we started the show today. And we're going to go through the schedule and let's see what we think about that 9.5. Start off with Murray State. And by the way, all the games with the boxes around them, those are home games. So we'll start August 29th with Murray State, dub. September 7th against Buffalo, dub. Boston College, a team that's rebuilding. That I don't think they stand a chance at your place. That'll be a dub. And then you got Vanderbilt at home. September 21st will be your last game of September, and you'll go into a bye week with a win there as well. So you start off 4-0, and then you got to go to Texas A&M October 5th. Do I think Texas A&M is going to be horrible? No, I do not think Texas A&M is going to be horrible. You can go watch the breakdown we've already done. I think that was just released as we're recording this, which was a few days before it was released. So but it's already been released. You can go check out what we've got to say about A&M. A lot of question marks over there. I'm not, a lot of talent as well. So, but I think that you're going to be able to go and get that win there at Texas A&M. That'll be a really, really good game, I think. But I suspect Mizzou will be favored and will win that game. Excuse me. And then you're going to travel to UMass on October 12th. Terrible idea. Should never do this. Why is Missouri going to the University of Massachusetts to play a football game? I'll never understand that. But it should be a win nonetheless. I think this team starts 6-0. Then you got Auburn at home, Alabama at home, Alabama on the road, I should say, correction. Oklahoma at home, South Carolina on the road, Mississippi State on the road, and then Arkansas at home to end the season in a rivalry game. I'm very excited to get this Missouri and Oklahoma thing riled back up. That's very exciting. As an SEC guy, I love rivalry games. This will be a really good one to rekindle after, I guess, not playing each other for quite a while. I don't know when the last time Missouri and Oklahoma actually played. But those last 6 games, Mason, you get Auburn at home. I think that helps. I think Auburn will be a little bit better than what people think. I think Alabama is going to be really good offensively. That's going to be a battle for the trenches. That defensive line will certainly be tested. I think that's going to be a tough game to go in and win. The rest of these games, Mason, I think Missouri can win. I think they can beat Oklahoma. I think it's going to be a really good game. I think Arkansas will be a good game at the end of the year with it being a rivalry game. But all in all, Mason, I look at these 12 games and I think I only see one loss, brother. I think I'm picking this team. To go 11-1, and I think they're going to lose that road game in Alabama, and I think they can win the rest of these games. Now, let me tell you, folks, most college football teams are going to lose a game they're not supposed to, and there are several rivalry games on this page, and we all know how those can get kind of crazy. So the Oklahoma and Arkansas game, I've got a couple of questions about. I could see some trouble there, possibly. More so Oklahoma than Arkansas. Mason, what do you think? I'm going with 11-1, man. And with this thing being at 9.5, I feel really good at betting 10 wins for this team because I feel like you're giving me an extra mess up, right?
Yeah.
Something crazy to happen in that Oklahoma or Arkansas game, which you get both of them at home, by the way. That also helps. What's your thoughts? And not to mention, you get a bye week before Oklahoma as well. So I wanted to throw that in there as well. That's very important. You get a bye week after that Alabama game. What's your thoughts on this schedule, and what's your predictions for this year for the Missouri Tigers?
Well, I think looking at the schedule, and it is, according to Pro Football Focus, at least, it is which take that with a grain of salt on most things. But when you're looking at strength of schedule, at least, it's pretty fair to kind of judge what they're saying. And they're the 54th team in the country as far as strength of schedule goes this year in 2024, um, which is dead last in the SEC. A lot of SEC schedules are much higher, especially considering the additions of Texas and Oklahoma. So yeah, this doesn't necessarily. It's still the SEC, right? You can still lose to an Arkansas at the end of the year and ruin your hopes of a college football playoff. But not wishing that on anyone. By the way, like don't come at me or do come at me in the comments. It doesn't matter to me. I look at this schedule and I say Texas A&M, Auburn, Alabama, and Oklahoma, which are 4 out of 5 games in the middle of your season, right? Kind of a tough little stretch there of games. You do get the bye after Alabama, but we'll have some answers after that. For sure, after a couple of those games, I'm concerned about Texas A&M being on the road, playing in Kyle Field. It's not a place that Missouri is unfamiliar with, but it's a tough place to play. It is one of the toughest in the country, and Texas A&M still got the dudes. They've still, if you look at their roster, if you compare position by position, they've still got a better roster than Missouri. They've got a brand new coach, though, all new coaches, and a lot of their players transferred out. They've got new players that have transferred in, and I'm really concerned about their secondary. Matching up against these wide receivers for Missouri, I think that's going to be the ticket for Missouri to get that win. I'm concerned about the game, but I feel good about Missouri winning that one. Kind of the same thing with Auburn. A lot of new with Auburn. Well, I say that it's kind of the same thing. It's really not because Auburn doesn't have the talent that Texas A&M has, but they're heading into year 2, and I'm concerned about their quarterback play. We got to see Peyton Thorne kind of do it this year with a little bit better wide receiver play out of Auburn, and I'm concerned with what they lost in the secondary, if they're going to be able to hold up against these wideouts, which really isn't a knock on Auburn. I'm pretty high on Auburn in their defense, but this is a really talented group of wideouts that's going to be able to take advantage of any hole that they see, and I think that Auburn might have some holes. And then Alabama is definitely the most complete roster that you're going to find. That you're going to face this year if you're Missouri, and one of the best rosters in college football. And I think that you're going to struggle there at just kind of matching up with dudes. Alabama's going to be able to play man pretty much the entire game and win a lot of those one-on-one battles. You may get beat over the top a few times, but I think that you would feel pretty comfortable with your guys in that game. I'm with you, Mark. I think on the road you're going to lose that game. Then Oklahoma at home. You do have a bye week before, but I'm pretty high on Oklahoma this year. That's a toss-up to me as well. It's tough for me to say. I can't think of a matchup really there with Oklahoma that Oklahoma could exploit, that is, to win this game. So I think I'm going to lean Missouri on that one as well. So I'm going to end up with you, Mark. I think 11-1 is fair to conclude based on the schedule. You probably do end up losing one other one, maybe one of those 3, Maybe it's a South Carolina on the road or something like that you probably shouldn't lose. But we've seen South Carolina get really hot late in the season and win some big games that they probably don't have any business winning. But nonetheless, I think 10 wins is a fair floor. 9 wins is definitely the floor. I don't think that they're going any less than 9 wins, but if I were to bet, I would definitely say over 9.5 and say it's a 10 or 11 win season. This team will be probably hosting a playoff game, which would be amazing to see in Missouri.
No doubt about it. Those stadium renovations would certainly come in handy for, excuse me, a December playoff game. I can't wait till that Alabama-Missouri game rolls around because, you really sit and think about these two teams, and I'm not going to go into this long thing on this, but Alabama's going to have a really good run game, really good offensive line, right? I'm not so sure how their passing game is going to. I mean, I don't think they're going to be horrible or anything, Mason, but I think this is going to be a running football team. And if Missouri can figure out a way to get Alabama off the field and not let them eat clock, I think this Missouri wide receiver core is going to be able to do what they're going to be able to run their program. I don't think this is a great Alabama secondary by any means. They lost the best player on their team that came from the secondary last year. And I know it absolutely is one of the most talented rosters in the country. It might be second or third, I would imagine, probably most talented roster in the country. But it'll be interesting to see how these two teams match up because I actually kind of think the more I think about it, I feel like Missouri might be a good fit to beat Alabama, but it is on the road. We'll just have to kind of see how that goes. What if a team was going to beat Missouri? What would you think that they would need to do it? It seems to me like you need a really good quarterback and some good wide receivers to exploit the secondary. And I don't see a lot of that on this schedule. That's kind of the thing. I'm not.
I think as an offense, you'd have to be complete. I think you'd have to be pretty balanced and be able to do both.
Sure, I'm just saying you got to make plays in the air to be able to take advantage. Because I do feel like, don't you feel like this defensive line and this this linebacker core is pretty good, right?
Right.
Right. If
I'm concerned. I'm concerned though. I guess with the pass rush a little bit for Missouri. So if you've got an offensive line that's got really good pass rush and you're giving the quarterback all kinds of time, or pass blocking, that is pass protection, then they're probably just going to eat you alive, especially with a secondary that's not just world beaters, right? You don't have first round talent all over the secondary, so that could be a concern. But I just look at the other side of the football and what kind of defense would beat this offense. And to me, it's a defense with an elite pass rush, and good or great secondary play, right? Good or great pass coverage. If that pass rush is elite, I think that they could give the interior of this defensive line some fits, of the offensive line. The defensive line could give the interior of the offensive line some fits. Penetrate up the middle and could kind of at least disrupt the quarterback. You don't have to necessarily get sacks. Make him roll out. Make Brady Cook roll out, which he does pretty well. But cause some havoc there, and I think that could be a recipe to slow this offense down because it's high flying. This is to me it's a top 10 offense in college football, and I think that they're going to produce that this year.
Should be able to take their shots down the field. Missouri fans, if you tuned in for this whole video, you're a real one, and we want you to come be part of the First and Long College Football Show community. Please consider hitting the subscribe button, hit the like button, so all our other college football brethren can come check this out. And we really enjoy doing this series. A lot of work that goes into it. Digging through these rosters is as hard as it's ever been with this transfer portal. It takes a lot of time, and but we sure do enjoy doing it, and we want you guys to come be part of it. So we hope that you'll subscribe to the First and Long College Football Show. But this has been our show on Missouri. There's our 2024 breakdown and predictions. I hope that you'll come join us again, and I really hope that you'll come join us in the season. Everybody have a great night. Signing out for First and Long College Football Show. I'm Marcus. That's Mason. See you next time.